Members, Minister officials, we are ready to start. It is 26 minutes past 10 and welcome to the Budget Committee scheduled for Tuesday the 3rd of June 2025 where we will be briefed by the Provincial Treasury on the Western Cape Appropriation Bill again. So we are aware of the process that unfolded. Before we get started, if we can just do brief introductions. In terms of apologies, we've just received an apology from member Lita Kong, and that is the only apologies that we have received. I'm Peter Johnson. I'm the chairperson of the Standing Committee on Budget. And if we can start with Member Bosman.
Good morning. I'm Gillian Postman, the chairperson of the Parliamentary Oversight Committee.
Member Stoff.
Good morning. I'm Member Beauty Stoffels and I'm an alternate member of the committee.
Morning, my name is Pat Lecker.
Good morning, I'm Benedict van Minnen.
Morning, Dave Bryant.
Good morning, Honourable Chair and members and all officials. Wendy Kaiser-Philander and Chairperson for Social Development.
Morning all, Norma French and Bombo. Thank you.
I'm Thomas Walters.
Good morning all, Derek Wessels, member of the committee.
Good morning, Chair and colleagues. Basil Beatrice.
Good morning, Chair, members and Minister and officials. I'm Leon van Wyk.
Morning, Chairperson, colleagues and our learned officials. I'm Member Boyson, the Chairperson for Health and Wellness.
Morning, everyone. My name is Noko Masipa. I'm a member of this portfolio committee. Thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, officials. Regan Allen.
Morning, my name is Nomin Goncho.
Thank you, members. Minister and HOD, over to you.
Thank you, Deirdre Bartman, Minister of Finance.
Morning, Chair. Morning, members. Tulinda Gantana, Head of Department.
Good morning, Annelies Pick, Public Finance.
Good morning, Karin van Drede, Public Policy.
Good morning, Jonathan Hendricks, Provincial Government Budget Office.
Good morning, Malcolm Boyson, Fiscal Policy.
Good morning, Ziad Majid, Infrastructure.
Good morning, Isaac Schmidt, Governance and Asset Management.
Morning, Michelle Nicholas, Provincial Government Finance.
Good morning, Paul Pinar, Business Information and Data Management.
Thank you, everyone. Before we move over to the briefing by Provincial Treasury, I would just like to afford the Minister and the HOD the opportunity for opening remarks, should they wish to do so.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chair, we've prepared 6 slides for the Budget Committee. Nothing in the Western Cape Appropriations Bill has changed, perhaps the date, because today is the 3rd of June, 2025. The Provincial Fiscal Framework has remained the same. And I think the only slide that might be of interest is the fact that in terms of law, because the national budget was withdrawn and retabled, that we also, in terms of the PFMA, have to retable. And I just want to, again, just thank both the Provincial Treasury and Legal just for all their guidance and support. It's really been a difficult year in terms of our legal muscles in this regard, but nothing has changed in the budget. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Minister. HOD, over to you and your team for the presentation.
Thank you, Chair. Can we get slideshow? Thank you. So we're going to just cover the 2025 Western Cape budget. We can do the next slide. So these are the documentations. The second slide is just provide a snapshot of the documentation that Minister tabled this morning. Slide 3 provides the outline. And I'm going to go straight to slide 4. I think the chair has already indicated that the committee is well aware of the process that unfolded. So I'm going to zoom into the bottom part of the slide that speaks to our response, and our immediate steps was then to ensure that we have legal compliance in terms of the Constitution and the PFMA, and then we're trying to show the relevant sections in the Constitution that we needed to comply with. And that then gave rise to the revised provincial budget process that is aligned to what has happened nationally. But it was also with the objective to ensure continuity of service delivery and adhere to our budget policy principles within the Western Cape fiscal strategy. At the bottom, we're just trying to highlight to the committee the four objectives of the process: legal compliance, uphold our fiscal strategy principles, provide a process of certainty and agility, and ensure continuity in service delivery. The key messaging of the revised national budget and the Division of Revenue bill in terms of the VAT hike that was proposed, that was formally then withdrawn. What we've seen in terms of what was proposed initially, and then what ended up happening was a reduced provisional unallocated funds over the MTF. Minister did say our fiscal framework remained intact, so the changes came in terms of the provisional allocations. What we have noted is that national reductions targeted these funding, and originally and additionally the allocations for provincial government remained unchanged. There's 180.1 billion rand in new national spending has been proposed. That is significantly lower than the 232.6 billion that was proposed in March 2025. The only fuel levy increase is in June 2025. It's the only new tax proposal. And while it raises some revenue, it is not sufficient to close the fiscal gap over the medium term. 7.5 billion was allocated to SARS to improve the revenue collection. And the expected revenue there that the entity is planning to collect there is between 20 billion to 50 billion in additional revenue annually. Infrastructure remains a budget priority, with alternative financing mechanisms being explored. And then in terms of further trying to close the fiscal gap is by means of looking at spending reviews to support long-term sustainability. Then what we see as, and the National Minister alluded to this, trade-offs to monitor this year, and that would come as expected perhaps online later on in the year or even over the MTF, is the potential withdrawal of the President's emergency plan for AIDS relief, infrastructure projects, BFI, and PROSA rolling stock fleet renewal program, the accommodating population changes that impact on the provincial equitable share allocations, strengthening capabilities in the Office of the Chief Justice and Statistics South Africa, as well as political party funding and infrastructure provision for royal houses, and then the national social dialogue. In terms of ensuring continuity in the Western Cape budget and planning response, it is the withdrawal of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill, and then a new bill being tabled this morning. The Western Cape Fiscal Framework, as indicated, remains unchanged. Departments and public entities are tabling strategic plans and annual performance plans, and with no changes to those, as neither of the conditions that trigger an amendment that is based on the DPME revised framework allows for the revision of these plans are currently present. Then just to indicate to the committee, Section 29 of the PFMA then gives us the leeway to continue to spend until such time that we do have a Division of Revenue Act and our Appropriation Act. Then also, just the next slide, the physical evidence that we would want to present to the committee when we're making the statement that no changes between the February 2025 and the May 2025 allocation letters. We've looked at that. And this slide simply compare the two, and one can immediately see that there are no differences in there. And then the second to last slide is just in terms of the MTF allocations, gives the committee an indication of those allocations that has remained unchanged from the last time we presented this to the committee. Just in terms of conclusion, the allocations over the MTF, in terms of the policy priority area, Ministers indicated this in her speech this morning, but 43.7 growth for jobs, 3.9 to safety, 194.9 to educated health and caring society, and 23.4 billion in terms of innovation, culture and governance. And then on the right-hand side, just a snapshot in terms of the economic classification of expenditure over the MTF, and hence the budget in a nutshell. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, HOD. Members, we will now afford members the opportunity for questions based on the presentation. Please indicate if you have any questions at this point in time. I see Member Nkondlo. Anyone else for the first round? No other hands. Member Nkondlo.
Thank you, Chair. Given the fact that I'm sure colleagues are silenced because it is said that nothing has changed. So they moved on the premise that nothing has changed, and therefore I think this is just a formality. But Chair, I just want to understand from the Minister in slide 5, given that with this issue of the peculiar pressure on education and health, that also includes the US aid funding. Are there any safeguards that the province had thought of, from this financial year going forward, on how we mitigate that particular reality? Because that's a reality that actually our province has been affected, particularly around the health pressures from the projects of USAID. And then I think one would always keep on asking the question around education, that with all the inputs made by the opposition parties in Parliament during the budget vote on considerations that Minister must make, so you come back to us and say, even with that, you remain unmoved with the submissions that we've made. If you'd listened during the budget debate and issues that we proposed, I remember from the Committee of Economic Development, one issue for reconsideration was the SMME Booster Fund. So you come back and you still, even against that, you remain unchanged. So things remain the same. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Member Nkondlo. Members, any other questions? I see Member Stoffel.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I just want to add what Member Nkondlo have asked in terms of local government. The same, after all the inputs of the previously, and then is that may be considered within whilst the municipalities under severe frustration and pressure.
Thank you, Member Stoffels. A final question before we hand over to the Provincial Treasury. I do not see any. Minister HOD, over to you.
I'll start at the final ones, and then I'll also ask the team to come in here. On the local government budget, both the local government budget and the environmental affairs and development planning budget received actually quite a substantial increase in this financial year in terms of their particular budgets. But I'll just quickly deal specifically with the local government. But when you look at both environmental affairs and development planning and local government, a lot of the programs we added additional revenue from the revenue fund was because a lot of those programs they do together. So for example, they received a lot of new disaster funding We actually had Colin Dyer at our smart procurement conference this past week, where he actually indicated to the procurement sector even that the amount of new disaster funding they receive is actually some of the most that they've received in a long time. So we've allocated a lot of new disaster funding. Grants for municipalities are contained both in local government, but there's also grants for municipalities in some other budget votes. For example, Provincial Treasury also has grant funding for municipalities. They've also seen a substantive increase in their two-song funding, because some of the two-song centers, they deal with multiple services in the different local government areas. And they've also received quite a substantial amount of funding in terms of capacity. And if I remember correctly, in the environmental affairs one was regarding the township strategy implementation funding that they got. But the team must just check for me, was that in the environmental one or the local government one? Because I know they also work together on that, because that's also linked to some of the RCEP programs in municipalities as well. In the economic development one regarding to the SMME Booster Fund, so the Provincial Treasury did not cut the SMME Booster Fund. I'll just take everyone through the process of the budget. The new additional funding that a department gets, that new additional funding came from the Provincial Revenue Fund. If a department decides to realign their budget over and above the new additional funding they get from the revenue fund, that is something that that department signs off on in terms of, and my advice is that that question goes to the respective committee in that regard, because that is not a matter that was cut by the Provincial Treasury. In terms of education and health, so the new funding that the National Minister has announced, that's not coming through in this budget. That will come through later in the year. Even some of the items on that slide 5 that you will see is not, it's new items in the national budget, but it's not necessarily money in the bank just yet. For example, the 7.5 billion rand allocated to SARS, they're going to get that money once the budget is passed, and then they must now collect the money. So the money that you need to collect is not in the bank account yet. So it's forecasted that you're going to collect that revenue. So if you over-collect or under-collect that, you will see later on in other budgets in the future. For example, spending reviews need to be completed in the national budget. So that is not money in the bank right now. So the education money and the health money we have not received. That was announced. We will get it. That was the commitment by the National Minister. And we will then essentially just pass it along with whatever conditions we get from National. We will just pass it along. But there is not money in our bank, and that's why you won't see it in this budget, for example. And this is specifically also because the 9 MECs at Budget Council, we were like, you know what? We are being faced by the fact that our provinces are increasing, population growth is really increasing, and we are feeling it on our service delivery. We really are feeling it. So we need the National Treasury to really look at Section 214 of the Constitution and be able to help fund those mandates in provinces in this regard. And that is part of why provinces got this additional funding. In terms of the potential, I think this was related, I couldn't hear the full question, Chair. I think that was related to the PEPFAR funding, I think. But if the member can just clarify for me, because I don't want to answer if I'm getting the matter wrong in this regard. HOD and the budget team, just, yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Yes, Member Kondlo.
Yes, I would appreciate if Minister didn't get the question to ask. You know, I'm inspired by the debates there at National Parliament that we must try and refrain from this thing of the executive when they are coming to account. They go all over when you ask a very, very simple question. For me, I think all I was wanting to understand is that those realities in the health budget, in the education budget, because we are all, I think we have been experiencing a reduction in allocations. I asked, are there any safeguards from the province that they are considering into the future? If they are there, I don't want to be taken into, I think Minister has got this thing of thinking that he must induct us about budget process and their meetings in the budget committees and all of that. I'm just asking if there are. If it's something that they are still thinking about, I think it's something they can do so, because we are always going to get into this conversation, and by the time you finish, you don't even remember your own question in the manner in which she answers.
Thank you for clarifying, Member Nkondlo. Minister HOD, back to you. Thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the budget team to assist you, but both Education Department and the Health Department received significant amount of increase of funding from our Provincial Revenue Fund. So we added from the Provincial Revenue Fund 3.2 billion rand into the provincial budget. And if I remember correct, I think of that 3.2, education in and of itself got just over under a billion, and health I think was something like 800 million rand of the provincial revenue fund that we added to their budgets. But if we can just get the exact amounts of the increase, please, just for the house. Thank you.
And I thank you, Chair, through you. I think I'm going to these two things that I just thought I should touch on. As at the time when the US aid was withdrawn, we were busy trying to finalize this budget that we are now that Minister's tabled today. And the implications of that became sort of one of these risks that we had to respond to. And so at the time, the discussion was, let's see how we utilize whatever we put in the reserve to also respond should these risk actually materialize. How would we be able to respond from a fiscal position in order to support both departments in terms of the continuation of the services. And so the discussion at the time was also, and the agreement between Minister and the departments were, we will ask of you to continue to explore alternative funding, but there is, we have made provision, or there is an opportunity for these departments to tap into those reserves should they not be successful to get access to whatever other funding is available. I think one needs to be mindful that the reserve is limited, but it will be a response to the crisis should there be no other mechanism out for these departments. And I think this committee will have appreciation for the fact that when we have these uncertainties and the things that we need to deal with as a collective, it does impact the system in general. So what we have, obviously, in addition to that, what we have done is when we were confronted with the fact that the national budget was tabled, that the fiscal framework was set aside, we needed to look at, okay, so what are our options? What do we have available in order to mitigate the risk? So we had to consult, and then we obviously Section 29 in terms of the PFMA provides for circumstances where annual budget is not tabled. But that section has comes with limitations. And if we then apply the limitations, we were very clear to departments, we can only spend up to 45% of the 2024 budget. And that is the messaging that we've given through. So I think there's general appreciation for the fact that there's a slowdown in the system. It does have a knock-on effect. So there's a slowdown in the system. And we've said that we're not going to accommodate any changes in cash flow projections. So what you've given to us as a Treasury, we did what the Treasury must do, and also living up to our principle in terms of, or our objective at least, is to provide the certainty in the system. And so we were very clear, you can only spend 45%. We're not reviewing your revising your cash flow projection. And that 45% of the 2024 budget, we said can take us to August, just in case the third attempt or the second attempt, let me put it like that, to have a budget table is not successful. So we, in order to mitigate the risk. So I think what we will find is, and if we look at our IYM, my prediction is 2 months in, it is a bit slower than what we would have seen if there were no risk in the system. And I think there is an opportunity in 5 months' time. We're coming back with the adjustment, ministers coming back with the adjustment budget, and there will be an opportunity for departments then to reassess. But I think the first aim was to provide this certainty, provide this stability, and I think with the guidance that we've given, we're comfortable and we're confident that we'll be able to continue service delivery to the extent that we can within the limitations of Section 29. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, HOD. Members, follow-up questions or new questions to the department? I see Member Stoffel.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, now that the MEC is indicating there was addition funds for the disaster management within local government. Currently, as we sit here, we are faced with flooding in our areas. We are faced with fires in the informal settlement. And there was a request from the municipalities to the province for assistance. And the province have indicated they don't have money. To such an extent that we have to contact the national government to assist in that formal settlements. And now I want to know, when you say there are reserves, to what extent is this reserves there when it comes even to local government? Because I mean, you don't manage the disaster funds, but you make funds available for the department in terms of disaster. And it will be difficult to say now, but Minister, your funds doesn't reach the people. You will tell me that no, that is the problem of the department. But at the end of the day, it remains a challenge of service delivery. It remains a responsibility of the government towards those people in that informal settlements. So maybe you can try to assist and even take it furthermore, because we are going to the Committee of Local Government, whereby they have to give us a kind of a presentation around the disaster management, particularly about informal settlements. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Stoffel. Members, any further questions? Member van Wyk and Member van Manen.
Thanks, Jay. Mine is just looking at slide 12 in the annexures on the spatial distribution. I think just on the figure for Cape Metro, I think I think there's a digit that's been slipped out of the total billion. It's not only 5 billion for Cape Town Metro. I suspect it's a 59.051 just in that total billion, that people just don't get the wrong impression there. So
thank you, Member van Wyk. I think we will get back to that question now. I think there's some confusion around your comment. Member van Manen.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chair, I'm looking at slide 5, and I think we can't avoid the elephant in the room. We all know the history of what has happened this year with the national budgets, and I say that in plural because there have been 3 of them. There's been enormous difficulty to get agreement on a national budget without literally fleecing the pockets of the poor. In terms of our equitable share, could I just ask where we are in terms of that, and how does it potentially affect our spend in the province, and what we potentially can do to plug that gap other than looking at the issues of where we are seeing very, very constrained budgets for various departments. Thank you.
Thank you, Member van Minnen. I just want to check before we hand over to the department again. HOD, would you like, Minister, if I ask Member van Wyk to just repeat his question? Member van Wyk, if you don't mind, if you can just repeat your comment or concern.
No, I just noted on slide 12, we've got the district split up of spatial distribution of the provincial budget by district. And the figures there have been allocated to each district, but I think just on Cape Town Metro, there's probably just a small error there that we've missed out a digit for Cape Town Metro, because that only shows Cape Town Metro's portion at 5.051 billion. And I think it's meant to be 67%. So I think it's probably a 9 or something that, so, I don't want this to be handed out and it's a million error.
Thank you, Member van Wyk. Minister and HOD, over to you.
Thank you so much. So my understanding is the percentage is correct, but the number, we must just do a bit of a errata there. I think that probably came up in the picture, but thank you so much for that. We will make that correction, but it is 67.1 in that regard. In terms of Member Stoffel's and presentation on disaster funding and the different budget votes. So for example, every department currently is spending on their 2024 budget. So the new funding in this 2025 budget, we're only retabling today. So if this House votes yes on this budget, this new funding will flow to the respective departments. So for example, local government, environmental affairs, social development also got an increase in funding for humanitarian relief. And part of that reason was because we said we can't be increasing capacity and funding for disasters in those two departments, but we don't add extra humanitarian relief and social development. So part of how we looked at how we fund disasters is to be able to assist in that. So one of the examples that we did is we said, okay, we are going to receive an increase of floods and fires and so on with all the different weather changes over the years. So something we have to do is we have to start more work on alien vegetation clearing, because that will actually assist with mitigating floods. We will not be able to prevent a flood. We will not be able to prevent a fire, but we do need to try to see how best we can try and budget better for them. This is over and above the ability to tap into the reserves. The reserves are limited, but if a disaster is declared, then local government has the ability to tap into the reserves in this regard. But I think what you mentioned regarding a presentation on disaster funding at local government is an excellent idea, so that they can take you through the different programs that they are planning, what they've done so far, but also what they're planning for going forward. I know, for example, we had to add extra funding for aerial firefighting, for example, because the national government indicated that they won't be able to assist with all of the aerial firefighting going forward. So part of that we had to do is we had to try and mitigate some of that. And something that's really concerning, for example, is that we also may have the possibility of seeing more fires in winter, which is completely different to some of the previous weather patterns that we've seen before. So I do think local government and environmental affairs does the best they can within the changing environment that they are in at the moment. But I think that's an absolutely brilliant idea regarding them being able to come and present what they've done previously, but also what they plan on doing going forward in this regard. But if, for example, if a disaster is declared, the department has the ability to tap into the reserves, as limited as they may be. On terms of the equitable share and affecting provinces, what we can do So our equitable share in its totality that we received in this budget is 65 billion. Of that 65 billion, only 65 million rand is additional. Because what happened is the National Treasury said, okay, we're going to give provinces the additional equitable share because that was data updates, and that came from the 2024 mid-year population estimates changes. And because of that, they phasing in the new updates so that the provinces who are most affected, it's almost like a bit of a cushioning so that you don't see a cut to your budget immediately. So for the Western Cape specifically, the increase in the provincial equitable share is 65 million rand that we're receiving this particular year. In terms of the pairs, and I'll also speak a little bit of alternative and blended financing because we also do some work with National Treasury on this. So the pairs, what we've had conversations with the National Treasury, and we've been supported by other provinces as well, particularly those who deal a lot with migration, is that we need to see a higher increase in terms of population share. At the moment in the pairs, what you see is the population percentages are part of like subsets and not like in its totality. So what that does is even when you update the population data, you're still sitting with, you might have the third biggest province like us in terms of population, but you're getting the fifth highest or fifth lowest in terms of your pairs. So it doesn't really speak to the amount of people that are really moving to the province for service delivery. And we really just want to be able to provide that increase of service delivery for people in this regard. Because even if you don't get that money, you must still deliver the service, whether you have the money or not. In terms of, then that's the population figure. We're also currently in conversation with the National Treasury regarding the economic component, because our argument is that if you are able to grow your economy faster, you will have less people dependent on the social sector. And I know, Chair, this is a little bit of a different mindset shift, because actually what we want to see in the budget process is less money being put into the social sector because people have jobs, because businesses are growing. And that's a bit of a mindset shift. It's almost like when you have less people calling into a call center, it's because there are less complaints. But sometimes you think, okay, there's less people calling into the call center in your APP, and you automatically make the assumption maybe people aren't being reached. But actually, one of the symptoms is because if you have less complaints, you have less phone calls to the call center. So it's very similar to that in terms of the mindset shift in terms of the economic cluster and the social cluster that we're seeing. Something that we also, we published our new alternative and blended financing framework. And what this framework really attempts to do is to help departments with the options that are available to them in order to find and source alternative funding, whether it is work with the private sector, whether it's concessional funding, whether it is commercial funding, whether it's just general partnerships. It's really to not dictate to a department what type of alternative funding they must use, but to give options and what the procedure is that they must follow. Something that we're working on with National Treasury at the moment is, for example, a credit guarantee vehicle with the World Bank. And the aim of that credit guarantee vehicle is, especially for projects in energy, in water, in logistics, to try and de-risk some of the alternative financing, because some of that financing, particularly for those projects, are very expensive. And in our ABF framework, we really also allow municipalities to also work with the Western Cape government in terms of this framework. And all we ask of municipalities, we can't have 30 municipalities with 5 different projects emailing the provincial treasury. But what we can do is we can collate and consolidate through local government and see, okay, what are our priorities? What is it that we can work with you on? What does your balance sheet look like? Are we able to assist you? Do you just need technical assistance, or is it something that you want to work with the Western Cape government on? Thank you, HOD. And then Taryn's team also worked on the ABF framework.
Chair, maybe we are coming back to the committee, the standing committee on the 12th, to talk to the issues around ABF, but I think Minister's covered it sufficiently. Thanks, Chair. Unless there's a question.
Thank you, HOD. Members, follow-up questions or new questions for a final round? See Member Petrus.
Yeah. Chairperson, is it correct that we retable the budget that was tabled previously in this House?
Thank you, Member Petrus. More questions, members? Final round. Thank you, members. I'll leave you with the final question from Member Petrus.
Thank you so much. The lawyers tell me I'm allowed to do it. The treasurers told me I'm allowed to do it. The provincial parliament told me I'm allowed to do it. National Treasury told me I'm allowed to do it. So, member, I really came today to say the budget is the budget is the budget. And we really want our departments to be able to get this new funding. Thank you.
Thank you, members. That concludes our discussions. The content, including the respective votes of the Western Cape Appropriation Bill 2025, are referred to the respective standing committee for consideration and adoption, including that each respective standing committee will hold public hearings on all of the votes from the 4th of June 2025 till the 6th of June 2025. The Budget Committee will consider these reports at a virtual meeting on Wednesday morning, the 11th of June, between 8 and 9, to consider and adopt the various standing committee reports, including its own report on the WCAB 2025. Members, before we ask the Minister and the Provincial Treasury to leave the House, I just want to afford them, if they wish to do so, any concluding remarks, but I'm sure it's up to you to decide on that.
None from my side. Just hope that 2026 will go a bit smoother, Chair. Thanks.
Chair.
Thank you so much, Minister and HOD, to you and the entire team finance. Thank you for all the work that you've done throughout the past few months. I'm sure you are also relieved that we've reached this point in time. So you are welcome to go. And I would just like to ask the members to stay behind for some administrative items that we have to deal with. Thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone. We just have to deal with some minutes and quarterly reports. The first is the minutes of the meeting dated the 14th of May 2025. I will just ask Mr. Davids to flight the minutes. All the minutes and the reports have been sent to all members.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. Through you, Chair, I'll just flag the minutes. The minutes, Chairperson. This is the last minutes that of the last meeting that we had, Chair. The Budget Committee of the 14th of May, Chairperson. Chair, it was just a straightforward virtual meeting, Chair, on the Western Cape Appropriation Bill that was rescinded, the B2 2025, Chair. The members were present. There was an apology that was noted, Chairperson. And then, Chairperson, it was just, Chair, yeah, it was just on the third quarter as well. Chair, yeah, so there were under number 4, Chair. There were some recommendations and actions, Chair. Some reports that was requested. If I can just make that little bit, there we go. So, Chairperson, there was a report on the capital expenditures specific to the Departments of Local Government and Infrastructure for the first, second, and third periods. A copy of the practice notes which guides departments on their adjusted targets and performances. A report on the 300 million underspending dispute between the Western Cape Government's Department of Infrastructure and the National Department of Human Settlements Chair. And then basically there was a request that the research unit of WCPP conduct a research on the Western Cape Government's cost of employment expenditure, the COE chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Davids. Members, can I ask for a proposer and someone to second? I see Member Masipa.
Honorable Chair, I propose that we accept and adopt the minutes as presented. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Masipa. Any member to second?
Second, Chair.
Thank you, Member Noma French.
I was about to make the same support with the vigor of Member Masip.
Thank you so much, Member Nkonlo. The second point on our agenda is the Budget Committee's third quarterly report for the 2024-25 financial year.
Chairperson, thank you. It's on the screen, Chair. So this is just for October to December, Chairperson, 2024. Once again, we've got our membership chair, the alternate members, and our permanent members of the committee, Chairperson. And then, Chair, we just had 3 meetings, Chairperson, for the quarter under review, which was the 26th of November, the 27th of November, Chair, and the 2nd of December, Chair. And then, Chairperson, we just captured the attendance of members at these meetings, Chairperson. And then, Chairperson, it was just basically the legislation that was finalized. Provincial, it was the Western Cape Adjustments Appropriation Bill, Chairperson. All the information is contained down there, Chairperson. There was a full debate in the House between the 5th and the 6th of December, Chairperson, on that matter. And then the committee also looked at the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill, Chairperson. And that matter was concluded on the 2nd of November, Chairperson, as well. Chair, just if you look at the budget, Chair, the committee was allocated 90,000 up until the 31st of December. There was expenditure of 68,000, Chair. That was mostly due to the adverts that was placed in the newspapers, Chair, for the appropriation, for the adjustments appropriation, as well as the DORA, Chairperson, the DORA Amendment Bill for this time frame, Chair. So that took up the 68,000 rand mostly, Chairperson, as well as the catering for the second and the third quarter of our meetings, Chairperson.
Thank you, Mr. Davids. Members, can we adopt the third quarter report? If someone can propose the adoption. I see Member Nkonlo.
I propose the adoption of the third quarter report. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Member Nkonlo, and Member Wessels to second. Thank you, Member Wessels. The third item is our fourth quarterly report. Over to you, Mr. David.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Chair, through you. Once again, this is just the quarterly report for the Budget Committee on its activities for the fourth quarter, Chairperson, January to March 2025. Chairperson, basically, if I can just skip, Chair, we only had one meeting, Chair, which was on the 27th of March, Chairperson, 2025 for the quarter, Chairperson, and we only had 3 resolutions. The committee made 3 resolutions that was sent on to the department, Chairperson, and it was in full attendance, Chairperson. That meeting, Chairperson, and it was basically also just to cover the Western Cape Appropriation Bill, Chair, on the 27th of March, Chair. Then, Chair, our budget basically came with the adverts, Chair. It came to 73,548, and that left us with a budget with a balance of 16,542 rand, Chairperson, for the end of the financial year, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davids. Members, can we adopt the fourth quarter report? If I can ask for a proposer. Thank you, Member Wessels, and Member Petrus, second. Thank you so much, members. The last item on our agenda is the annual activities report for the 24-25 financial year. Over to you, Mr. David.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Through you. Once again, Chair, this is just a draft annual report. Until the committee has adopted it, Chair, it will become the committee's annual report, Chair, which will be ATC'd. Chair, it's just from the 1st of April to the 31st of March. As you know, Chairperson, that for the first quarter, it was elections last year, Chair, so there wasn't any meetings. The committee was only formalized in June last year, Chair. So, Chair, the Budget Committee basically sits with Provincial Treasury and National Treasury on the different legislation, Chairperson, and feedback as well. For the year under review, the committee had 7 committee meetings, Chair, which is also considered as 7 public hearings, Chair, because it's put out on social media, Chair, each meeting and calling for public participation. Chair, the committee looked at 2 provincial bills, Chair, which was the Appropriation Amendments Bill last year, November, Chair. And this year was the Western Cape Appropriations Bill, Chair. And then for the NCOP bill, it was a DORA, Chair, the Division of Revenue Amendment Bill last year, Chair. In Chair, basically, it was just highlighted that on the 5th of July, that was during the second quarter, the committee met on the 5th of July to constitute itself. And then as well on the 18th of September, Chairperson, it had a meeting. And as well as the 26th of September, Chairperson, it also had a meeting with the first 3 paragraphs captures the second quarter's performance, Chair. And then basically for the third quarter, Chair, as per the quarterly report that the committee just adopted, just the activities on what the committee met on, Chairperson. And then the fourth quarter, basically just the committee meeting on the 27th of March, Chairperson. Then just with the legislation, the committee met on the DORA, as well as the Western Cape Additional Appropriation Bill, Chair. And then as well this year on the Western Cape Appropriations Bill, Chair. And then basically, Chair, just public participation and involvement. Adverts have gone out, Chair, for these bills, Chair, through the social media and newspapers, Chair. And basically, Chair, at the end of the financial year, the committee had expenditure of 73,458. And it had an underspending, Chair, overall of 16,442, Chairperson. And that is the report, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. David. Members, if we can have a proposer and a seconder for the annual activities report for 2024-25.
Chair, I propose that we accept and adopt the report.
Thank you, Member Masipa. Seconder?
Derek Wessels will second, Chair.
Thank you, members. That is the end of our draft committee documents. Just in terms of resolutions and actions for today's meeting, Mr. Davids, did you record any resolutions?
Chairperson, through you, no, Chairperson. There were just some questions that was asked, Chairperson, the pressures on education and health from Member Nkondlo. Member Stoffels asked about the disaster funds increase, which the department said that it will be good to raise it at that standing committee meeting, Chairperson, with the Department of Local Government, Chair. Member Van Wyk basically made an amendment to slide 12, which the department said that they accept, Chair. And then Member Van Wyk just basically asked about the provincial equitable share, Chair. But there was no substantive resolution, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Davids. Members, any resolutions that you would like to add to today's meeting? Member Nkondlo, and then Member Mbombo.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure whether it's to the meeting of the minister because I wanted to make a resolution outside of that. Can I proceed?
Please go ahead.
Yes, Chair, I think also informed by this last report, 2 issues I would like the committee to consider for the future. One is the issue of the instrument for Parliament to amend the money bill. that process, I think, started in the other financial year, and it was led by this committee. So I would like for us to reconsider and that matter be brought so that we get an update so that we can resuscitate that process. And secondly, Chair, I think we need to consider, because I think even in the process of the money bill, in part of the discussion, how do we improve public involvement and participation in budgetary processes? Because whilst we can say on record we've done adverts, there is very little traction of ordinary people around issues of budget, so that when we engage here, it is not a political football, but also people are also taken on board. So I think it's something that we need to find some kind of creative ways, as members, of what could we do to make I think the former chair used to say, make finance fun. How do we do that to improve on public involvement in budgetary processes? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Member Nkondlo. Member Mbombo.
Thank you, Chair. Can you remind me when did we say that they will be presenting the, what do you call it? The alternative
and blended financing.
Yes. When is that?
That is scheduled for a meeting in August with the delegation from the Northwest that we will have in the Finance Committee. We will deal with that presentation in the Finance Standing Committee as well. On scheduled for next week, the 12th, I think.
Oh, okay. So it's going to be part of that. So,
Finance Committee.
okay.
Yes.
No, it's because remember we are coming from when they were presenting at the Infrastructure Standing Committee, but we wanted to engage further, but with the specifics of all the different models. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you, Member Mbombo. Any further resolutions? I do not see any. Members, that brings us to the end of today's meeting. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you.
you.